Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Greenberg, and today I want to feature someone who I think is doing extraordinary things as an older adult. That's what we are. We're older adults over 55. And full disclosure, it's an old friend and someone I respect tremendously, again, who's doing great things. My guest is Robin Damato, and she's a publishing industry veteran and now the author of 3 novels. And again, all written over 50, I might add, and have achieved critical acclaim. Her most recent release is Sugar Free. It's a beautifully written novel about what it was like for a child living with diabetes in the tumultuous 60s and how she navigates her life to the present at almost 60 years old. That's in the book. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about doing this.
I asked you here today to share your story as a lifelong diabetic and how that impacted you and how you found the courage and the belief in yourself, not only to live life to the fullest, but also to write this book. I really want to showcase you as a role model for people who are out there who think they're too old, too infirm, letting life's trials and tribulations get the best of them, and they can't do anything anymore. And this is kind of like my quest. I know that I'm so focused on wellness all the time, but I'm really trying to, some of my mission is to pull that out in people, to say, what can you be doing now? How do we embrace where we are today? So my first question is, how did this book come to fruition for you? Like what pushed you to take your personal story and weave it into this fabulous fictitious account of what it's like to grow up with a chronic disease that most people don't understand?
Well, actually, I never wanted to write about diabetes, but I came up with the title and I thought, I have a perfect title. I need to write this. And by the way, my father is 98 and is writing his second book.
Wow. Wow.
So it kind of runs in the family.
Good. That's amazing.
I find that I didn't want to write about me personally, although obviously a lot of the things that happen in the book are based on my experiences and experiences from other people I've known. But I realized that there is no literature about diabetes from the standpoint of a diabetic. There's things like Steel Magnolias, and there's plenty of books, nonfiction books, but there was nothing that really talked about the emotional and hardships and various obstacles that you go through as a diabetic. And I thought maybe it's time to write it.
Throughout the entire story, the character Ginny Eastman, has to confront the ignorance of all around her about diabetes. And your detailed description of how she was diagnosed and treated was astounding. The doctors, the medications, the manipulation of drugs and food, how the family views her, um, and the lifelong shadow of it hanging over her. It made me really like cheer for all the little successes that she achieved. And while writing this, were you able to put yourself in the position of Ginny's parents and brother, how they viewed Ginny rather than um, relating
Oh,
to Ginny?
yeah. Yeah. I realized I needed to do that because I didn't want it to be one-sided. One of the things I wanted to do was a lot of times when people write about diabetes, it's either um, like a cheerleading book, you can do it, you can do it, or it's maudlin and and I wanted to be realistic. So I thought, well, I got to put opinions of other people in there and other viewpoints because otherwise it's not realistic. I didn't want a woe is me book. Definitely not.
And the little bit that, like, what I loved about what you did with this book is that you the characters were developed, and you could feel what the mother was feeling, what the brother was feeling, what the father was feeling, but you didn't spend so much time on it that it was boring, if that makes sense. Some people spend too much time on a peripheral character, and it's like, okay, get to the point already. You
Right.
did a beautiful job in just giving enough of a taste of what they were like and what they were doing, but beautifully described how it affected Ginny. without her being a self obsessed narcissist, which many people can become in having a chronic disease. That it's
Very
all
much
about what
so.
you can't do rather than what you can do.
Very much they become victims. And I definitely didn't want to portray her as a victim, or that she even felt that way.
Mhm.
Um, it is hard with a chronic condition to not, I mean, obviously she has her moments of feeling sorry for herself, and as we all do, but um, I wanted to portray her as a hero.
Robin, Ginny is a little kid, both in age and in stature, and her big brother hands her a basketball and she's hooked. Tell me about the basketball. Why did you pick basketball as her passion, her sport of choice, and her career choice ultimately for a little diabetic kid to pursue?
My cat is answering this, but sorry.
That's okay. No, the cat
Hey,
can.
yeah, the cat has his opinion too.
Okay, he can
Um,
participate as much as he wants. It's fine.
um, when I was growing up, I was a dancer, and I didn't want to write about dancing. I never really felt that it was a good story.
Mhm.
I did start playing basketball as a kid because my sister's friend was a basketball freak. So my father put up a basketball hoop and we started playing. Of course, no one in our family is very tall.
Yeah.
So I thought that might be a more interesting angle. And I mean, I definitely had issues trying to be a dancer and being diabetic, but I thought, imagine trying to be a professional athlete. And by the way, there is somebody in the MLB now, Major League Baseball, that is a diabetic, a type 1 diabetic. He was just diagnosed. So it does happen.
And
And
and they can get through it. They can
and
actually pursue their career and manage the diabetes at the same time.
exactly. Well, he just got diagnosed. We'll see how he does.
Good, good.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. We'll follow up with that as well. Um, so the character has an older brother, Asher, and he's drafted and sent to Vietnam. Um, so he's the one that introduced his younger sister to basketball. So she looked up to him. She wanted approval by him, but also he was her best friend and comrade. I loved, Robin, how you told the story simultaneously of what Ginny was going through and the perspective of how the family views a boy in the 60s who was sent to Vietnam. Again, you did that brilliantly. You wrote how it affected the family and the perspective of the younger sister. Because if you're 7 years old and your brother is being sent to Vietnam, you don't understand why. You don't understand the implications of that. And you almost wrote it in a way like, not that he left you behind, but that he disappeared. And I love that you did that. She was confused. Why was he going away? She kind of understood it, not really. Um, and then how it unfolded when he came back. So I wanted to ask you, was that a sign of the times for you? Or was there a personal connection to a soldier that made you want to write this story or write him into the story?
There were a few things. The Vietnam War definitely was overshadowing everything at the time. Um, I didn't know anyone personally. I have a good friend whose brother was sent to Vietnam, and he was older. He was 13 years older than she was. So I kind of got the inspiration from that. But I mean, certainly a lot of my older cousins had to deal with people being sent to Vietnam. I don't actually have any cousins that were sent to Vietnam. I think a lot of them went to college and were miraculously spared, but their friends weren't. So I thought, I can't write about the 60s and not write about the Vietnam War. I
And
just can't.
I'd like to know, just as an aside, what was the research for that like? Were you able to interview anyone who had been there, or
I didn't interview people, but I did read a lot of books. There were books about letters from Vietnam that I thought were much better than the books about Vietnam because you heard it from the soldier's voice. And I read a lot of those letters and then I compiled them to make Asher.
Oh, very interesting. Uh, I, and Ginny and her brother had this bond through music. And the extensive record collection was the solace for both Ginny and her brother. He introduced her to the Beatles and Dylan, etc. But your writing made it feel forbidden. It almost like it was it was a little secret between you and Asher that nobody else was in on.
Well, part of that is I realized the parents probably were not, it was probably a secret from the parents because the parents were definitely not approving.
Yeah, not on board with the music.
Yeah, they definitely weren't on board. It was funny in my household, my parents were very open-minded, but it took them a long time to come around to the Beatles.
Yeah.
A long time. They were just so anti-Beatles, and so were we, actually, until my father brought home Abbey Road one day because he decided that he wasn't being fair. And he brought the album home and it just blew our little minds. And
That's
that was the end of that.
wow. That's really funny. My
Yeah.
mother played the Beatles in the house when we were little because it was so upbeat and fun. And I remember being 3 and 4 years old and it playing in the house. So it's kind of interesting the
Your
perspective.
your parents are a lot younger than mine were.
Yeah. So my mother was only in her 20s when that was going on. So
And
yeah.
my parents were a good 30 years older than we were when we were born.
Yeah.
So they were of a whole other generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the music you picked to feature in the book, and this is all music that still speaks to you today.
Oh, definitely. And I had to do a little research on that because I couldn't remember when things came out and
Yeah. Mhm.
exactly how things were. I mean, the country Joe and the Fish song, I remember again, a friend I was growing up had an older brother and he used to play it on guitar. And so that's how I was introduced to that song. And I thought it was great. And then I later went and hunted it down and listened to the original.
And I think
Uh,
they played it at Woodstock, didn't they?
that's exactly where it was from.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard to wrap our head around that we were little kids during Woodstock and the profound impact it had, on the world still today. It's stunning.
Yeah.
We all kind of knew what was going on, but we were little kids. We didn't really have a deep sense of it. As you move along, Ginny was feeling shame about her disease, her body, her sexual awakening, and the world around her was changing. It was all going on at the same time. But she still managed to navigate that minefield with her friends by her side. I want to talk to you about the friendships. I thought your characterization of her relationship with the two best friends, Tilly and Renee, were so beautifully detailed. And they continued until present when in the book they reach right around the age of 60. Again, was that something you experienced as a youngster, having best friends that you could tell everything to and be everything with, or was that a made up relationship?
Kind of both. When I was in grammar school, I did have two very close friends. So it was basically inspired by that. We did grow apart once we hit high school because we were in totally different classes at that point. But at the current reunion I went and it was like we never met, never left each other.
Yeah,
So it's I think when you have friends that young, you always have that connection.
yeah,
Um, and then now I have, your brother and uh two other friends that we met in college and we are still very, very close. So I kind of based that storyline on those two things.
yeah. Because you had the high school friendships and the friendship it carried all the way through college. You never lost those friends, and that's like you say, that's the beauty of the lifelong friendships, which you did great because, as what we're researching now, we see a lot of, just to interject a little, the people the longest, The people who are your friends the longest in your life is who you're going to rely on in older age. That's who gets you through. Even though you can always develop new friends at any time, those lifelong friendships will always be there to save you. I mean, it's just fantastic. And all the subsequent relationships in this book seem to have everybody had to have the diabetes explained to them.
Exactly.
And how exhausting that must have been for Ginny. So and I think you described it. You in my take on it, my interpretation is I think you made Ginny patient. So were you patient with people that didn't understand it, or you couldn't have the candy bar, or the ice cream truck came and you weren't allowed to have, or whatever it else did?
Yeah, I kind of took it in stride. I mean, I certainly had my rebellious phases. I was not I did not experience Ginny's uh particular um issues, but I certainly was I did act out, certainly.
So that's what I was going to say that you so a little bit of a spoiler, but Osher is so destroyed by being in the Vietnam War. He actually doesn't make it. I want people to read the book, so I'm not gonna kill the Sugar Free by Robin Damato. I'm not gonna keep the whole story. But he took to smoking pot when he returned, which was a very common coping mechanism for many young men who came back from the war. Um, did you pick up pot? Did you? And I did I'm allergic to it, but I tried it in high school. Was that something that you did? Was that rebellious against the diabetes? Was it something that was just a part of our lives in high school? What how do you feel about
Yeah.
having smoked marijuana in the 70s? I know it's a kind of a strange question, but everyone looks at it now, they're walking down the street smoking pot. For us, it was like, you weren't a bad kid, but it was edgy.
It
It
was
was,
definitely edgy.
Mhm. Yeah.
Everyone was smoking pot. Um, I actually at one point I was in the kitchen with my father and he turned to me and he said, "If you're going to do anything, smoke pot."
Oh, okay. That's a good one. That's the most benign of all the problems, right? Of all.
That's exactly what he was thinking. And it started to affect actually my grades because I was smoking a lot and I was starting to not care about school,
Right.
honestly. Um, but I survived it. Um, and I don't touch the stuff now. It's too strong for me.
Mhm.
But back then it was just fun. It was just you didn't get that super stoned thing that happens with current pot that's just so strong and I can't even touch it
It's
now.
so highly, for lack of a better word, it's so highly processed to be, or engineered to be so strong and so effective now, that, there's this, we talk about this a lot when we look back, um, at our childhood, that even I think some of the worst childhoods were more idyllic than life is today. Life is so hard today for so many people, for young people, for older people. And so having to have an additional thing to deal with, um, can you verbalize or tell us, describe what it was like to feel, to have diabetes? Did you feel like an outsider all the time, or was it just certain circumstances?
That's actually a good question. I was thinking about this morning. As a kid, I kind of felt like a freak. And I think one of the reasons I am patient with people is because I tried to hide it as much as possible. I wouldn't bring it up unless it was necessary. Um, and in a way that helps you to navigate it. Because if you're thinking, I'm going to act like I'm normal, so therefore I'm not going to have these highs and lows. I'm going to work on not have, I mean, I'm going to have them, but I'm going to work on it. But it was interesting because the older I got, it sort of leveled the playing field because people started coming down with their own stuff.
Mhm.
But as a kid, everybody was healthy and jumping around and doing whatever they wanted to do and eating whatever they wanted to eat. And I was kind of a freak. So it didn't affect me that much. I just decided I was unique, but in the beginning, I was definitely affected by that.
In the book, Ginny's mother was what we call today a helicopter mom, a mom who just drove the kid crazy, was terrified all the time. Uh, a mother has to be, that's the place you go to. You're terrified that something bad is going to happen to your child, so you hover and you monitor all the food, all the medications, the lifestyle, the whole thing. Was that your personal experience as well?
My mother was a hoverer,
Mm.
and she hovered over my sister too. Don't get me wrong, but of course, because I was damaged, let's put it that way. Definitely was a hoverer. And at one point she said, "This is my job." I was like, okay, I understand. I mean, she was like that even when I was adult, it was just kind of, she couldn't let that go. And I remember my sister was coming home from something and she said she was running late and her friend dropped her off and my sister said, "See, that's the hysterical woman at the door." That's my mother.
It's so have you come are you in a place of peace with it now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, things are all very different now. I can tell what's going on.
Mm.
I growing up, we had no clue. I mean, there was no way to tell what was going on at the moment that you needed to know. Um, and there was no warning. There was nothing to tell you. And now there's all kinds of innovations and gadgets and things that help knowing that. Yeah,
So did you live in fear?
often.
Yeah.
Often I would worry about doing the simplest things, like going out with my friends I mean, if something I was looking forward to would happen, I would start thinking, well, it may not turn out well. Don't look forward to this, and I still kind of do that. I stop myself, but I'm aware of the fact that I still do that.
And you have a good control over it now. You have a
Oh yeah, yeah,
and you're healthy.
yeah.
Yeah. You're doing great. So I want to talk more about you for that reason. So in your um this is full disclosure, Robin's a family friend, but this subject is absolutely amazing. In your biography on the book, you state you have a room in your New York City apartment that has 3,000 albums. Let's discuss that. Are they all original vinyls?
Yes, yes, they are. I mean, I certainly have CDs, but the music room is all vinyl. I have disco, I have early 60s, 70s. I mean, everything. I think the most I have is the 80s because of the 80s I had disposable income.
Oh,
So it was like, and albums were $4 a pop, and we had Tower Records down the block. So I have a lot of 80s, but it's a huge eclectic collection.
I also, in the book, that you made associations with the music at the time of what you were writing, and as the years went by, you weaved it in again so beautifully. With no, I marveled at that you weren't a hippie or a disco girl or any. You didn't label Ginny as any one thing. Just this incredible love of music that got her through very hard times, like a tremendous solace to her, no matter what she was going through, and pursuing the latest music, what was going on. So that again parallels your personal interest. And
Definitely.
yeah, and do you fashion yourself as a collector, or it's just a personal quest for your to have the music you love around you?
It's definitely the latter. I don't consider myself a collector. Like I don't think, oh, this is a rare whatever. I can't touch it. I can't open it. I don't do that. It's all about collecting the music itself and having, if I think there's a group or even just a song that I don't have and I want to have in my collection. I make mixed CDs a lot. I make them for my sister.
Mhm.
So I have this huge collection. I digitize everything and I make CDs for her. And so part of that is, oh, I need this song. I need this artist. I need this. Yeah.
So do you go into the room and it's categorized by alphabet years? How do you manage a 3,000 album?
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Um, it's mostly alphabetized. Most of it is rock oriented, so that's the main section. But then I have disco and big band in different sections. Because if I'm going for disco or if I'm going for big band, it's usually a different kind of playlist. So I separate them out.
Have you had to upgrade your turntables?
Yeah. It's really hard to find a turntable that plays singles.
Yeah, yeah,
Which I did find one, and it's I think it's called a concept or something. It's a fancy
yeah.
turn.
So for those of you who are not old enough, which most people that listen to this show aren't, we used to listen to what's called a 45, and an album was a 33.
Right.
And we would stack them with a little plastic insert to go on the turntable, and you would just play those singles over and over again. So if we heard a single on the radio, we'd go out to the record store and we would buy the single or the album. So this is just, for the benefit of people who don't even know what this is. We call them singles and 45s, and it's just such a fun thing that you still have that. So what tell me about how, like I said, the book parallels some of your life, but you fictionalized it beautifully. And what did you aim to achieve by writing this book?
Um, well, like I mentioned, there really wasn't any literature, fictional literature about being diabetic. Um, I decided it would make a good story, but I also thought if I was realistic enough, it would it, it would inspire people in some ways. It would certainly inform people. Um, that wasn't my main goal, but I thought while I'm writing it, I might as well add that to the mix, especially trying to be realistic. I'm a realistic
Mm.
author. Nothing makes me happier than people saying, "Did this happen for real?" or not knowing what's real and what isn't. I think that's great.
And as a reader, I feel that too. Like this would never happen. This is ridiculous. What she's saying is crazy. Uh, yeah. So Robin, I wanted to ask you a little bit also about Ginny fared well in the story, made it to adulthood. You have personally fared very well, made it to older adulthood, and you're doing great. When people aren't doing well with diabetes, there's a lot of blame game going on. Is there just some people that can't get a handle on it through their food and lifestyle choices? Is it just a runaway train for some people?
Oh,
There's so much
absolutely.
shaming going on with all kinds of chronic illnesses. That's why I do that.
Absolutely. Well, it's like if you have lung cancer, then you must be a smoker. If you're a diabetic, I literally had a date with somebody one time, and he said to me, "Oh, you're a diabetic. Your mother must have given you too much sugar as a kid." And I'm like, "No, that's not. That's has nothing to do with that." And he insisted. He
Yeah.
was adamant, and I was like, "This is the last date with you, sir." Um, some people fare better than others. Some people And I don't think it's necessarily how you manage it, because I know for me, I'm right on it. And sometimes I just have highs, lows, they bouncing around. I mean, it's not perfect. And you have to get used to the fact that it's not perfect, and just be on top of it. But I think I know people that, or maybe I've heard of people that won't give themselves shots, that want their husband or boyfriend or whatever to do it because they can't handle it, or they can't handle finger pricks, or they can't handle. which I can't relate to,
Hmm.
because I think the number one thing is to be independent yourself, because if you're on a subway train somewhere and you get stuck, you need to know what to do. You're not going to be with, always be with a friend or your boyfriend or whoever to take care of you. It's just, I've always been independent, and I've always prided myself on being independent. But I think some people just, you're right, they just can't handle it, for whatever reasons they have. But yeah, even if you're on top of it, it's never perfect.
So, which leads me to, which we didn't really talk about in the show interview or questions. Do you want to share with us um, maybe actually what diabetes is and the difference between, I know there's a lot out there, but the difference between juvenile and mature onset, or sometimes what we call diabetes 1 and diabetes 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, and that's actually something that a lot of people ask me. Um, type 1 diabetes, what we call it now, your pancreas is not working, period. It is not making insulin. You can become a type 1 diabetic as an adult. Like famously, Mary Tyler Moore in the middle of the Dick Van Dyke Show came down with type 1 diabetes, which is why they call it type 1 and not juvenile anymore. Type 2 diabetes, your pancreas is still producing insulin, but your body is not processing it properly, which is why they can take oral medications and they don't have to take insulin. Sometimes it's severe enough that they do have to take insulin, but usually a lot of times they can just take, metformin or various other oral medications to take care of it. A type 1 diabetic has to take insulin. It has to be given artificially. There's no other way
It
around.
gets in place of what the pancreas would be doing. Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly.
And, how active are you in the type 1 or juvenile diabetes community?
Um, I'm in touch with the ADA,
Mhm.
American Diabetes Association. Um, honestly, I'm not an advocate per se. Um, I guess I'm too selfish to do that. But I did consider writing this book for partially for that reason, because um, there was somebody, a friend of mine hooked me up with on Instagram, who considers herself a diabetic ninja, and she's totally um, an advocate, and I can't relate. Um, I That's not my style. My style, I guess, is to write a novel about it. um, it appeals to me more. I think it's more personal that way. Just people saying, you can do it, rah rah, is not my style. Everybody's different. Everybody needs different stuff. So just telling people they can do it is not enough, I think.
I think the message came across beautifully, and like I said, I hope to help you inspire people by reading it and reaching out and learning about it, because that's always really, that's the thing, is educating yourself about something before you open your mouth and say anything or make assumptions, is find out the story ahead of time. Robin, you wrote 3 novels now. I don't want to call them later in life. That's kind of like, it's not so late in life, but certainly you just took to it. Tell us about that. Tell us about your novels and how you sort of, have you transitioned fully? You're not working other than writing your books now?
Sadly, I'm still working.
Oh,
I
okay.
still have my day job.
Okay. Okay.
I am about to retire. I mean, I'm of retirement age. I have to work that out and see what I want to do.
Okay.
Um, I always wrote. As a kid, I always wrote. I had started several novels when I was in college, but didn't have the focus to really do it. Um, somewhere along the line, somebody talked about novel writing month, which is you write a 50,000 word book in 30 days. And I thought, I'm going to try this because I had an idea at the time. And that's how I wrote my first book. And I was 50 something. I don't remember what, 55, 50, maybe 55 at the time.
Were you insecure about releasing a book in your 50s? Did you feel?
I wasn't thinking in terms of age, but as a right, releasing a first book is always
No, very
intimidating. Yeah.
And that book is somebody's watching you, right?
Actually, no. I wrote Don't Poke the Bear first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was really difficult because of how I had the three stories, and as a first novel, it was a bear,
Mhm.
not to make
Literally. Yeah.
literally a bear. Um, so I put it aside when I was having a lot of difficulty making it work. And then I had the idea for Somebody's Watching You. So I wrote that during Novel Writing Month the next few years later. And that became the first book I published.
Amazing. And it's still selling.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, it
I
is.
have three out. This is absolutely fantastic. And so where are we going now? What's next?
I have a few half finished books that I'm
Mhm.
going to revisit. I might come up with a new idea. This is what happened with Sugar Free. I mean, I was working on something else actually. And then I had the idea, the spark came to me, and I thought, no, this is the next book.
And are you feeling like the story's told and now you just want to go back to fun fiction, or has it changed your perspective on what you want to write about?
Actually, no, I'm kind of open to any topic.
Mhm.
Um, I don't I don't feel I have to. I mean, I'm even thinking the next book might be with a male main character, because I wrote something during Novel Writing Month a few years back, and I was revisiting it, and I thought it actually was pretty interesting. So I may revisit that. So that would be a total
Yeah.
departure.
And during novel writing month, you just spew 50,000 words. You don't worry about the spelling, the editing, the typos. You get it
Exactly.
out. Okay.
Yeah, you just the point is it's a great exercise because it makes you move forward.
Mhm.
It makes you not re-edit, because part of the problem with writing a novel is you keep editing yourself and you never move forward. So Novel Writing Month is about you get one a beginning, a middle, and end by the end of the month.
And you do your own editing. You don't run it by somebody else to have it checked, or a second pair of eyeballs to
I have a beta reader,
okay.
good friend of mine. She's read all my books several times. Poor girl. Um, I and then my publisher has some great editors. So, but I want it to be in as close to perfect before I send it to the editor, because I want to make sure that what I'm saying makes sense. So there's no question about what my intentions are before it goes to the editor. I think that's important. Um, a lot of times if the editor isn't getting something, they'll suggest something that just doesn't make sense. Luckily with my publisher Atmosphere, their editors are very respectful of the authors. So
That's
they
good.
don't say anything. Everything is up to you. If they'll make a suggestion, if you don't like it, you can ignore them.
Well, I'm wishing you many, many more novels going forward and many successes with that. And Robin, I always ask my guests, what do you like about getting older?
I'm so much saner. I'm so much saner than I was when I was growing up.
A
And
great word.
even, I mean, I was insane in college. I was insane right after college. I am so much saner than I ever was.
So
Maybe still neurotic, but definitely saner.
that's a fantastic answer. So Robin, again, in closing, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing such valuable information to our listeners. And to learn more about Robin and to buy this book, Sugar Free, excellent book. I can't recommend it enough. You can go to www.robindamato.com, and we will also post all the links on the show's contact page. So again, thank you, Robin.
Thank you
And
so much.
welcome. And thank you all for listening to Age Well. And please subscribe to my channel for our engaging discussions on all things aging well. And for feedback and topic requests, you can also contact me at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Thank you again.